This is the time in our service for prayer, for meditation, to witness that we are a community that holds the entirety of our lived experience with both hands. As we read these joys, as we hold these joys and hold these sorrows, meet them with a generous spirit. We hold Lynn and her son Jonathan, who has returned home to Reno for 5 months after working in Oregon as a firefighter this past fire season. We hold joy with Nancy Cadigan for her husband, Michael, and I'm going to mess up his last name, Jeffaloni. Thank you. His birthday is Tuesday, November 5th. And he's out in Covington, Louisiana for the next 3 weeks. We hold with Carol and George Johnson, their son Zachary, whose 36th birthday is on November 5th. We hold with Bill and Cindy Fogel, Katie. Katie's birthday is Monday, November 4th. She shares a birthday with her uncles Bob, Rick, and Tom. And we also come together this morning in joyful celebration and welcome with Maggie, Perry, Rocky, and Rad, as they have welcomed a joyful celebration of a new daughter, Reverie June, who was born last Tuesday. And as we are a community that holds it all with both hands, we hold Leah and Charlotte and their great-grandma Anne, who's hospitalized at Carson Tahoe with heart and lung issues. As we rest in this moment, we rest in a reality that offers us joy, offers us new birth and birthdays, new beginnings and sustained lives. This is a moment that offers us the reality of our human condition, illness, fear, uncertainty. And we are resilient, courageous people, capable of holding the both and of uncertainty in this moment. So I invite you to take a moment of silence, reach down into yourself, and hold close to your heart the joy and the sorrow. And as our time together wanders its way to the end, if you have your eyes closed, I want to invite you to open them slowly. And as you open your eyes, I invite you to look around this room at this morning light, the sunbeams pouring in behind you, the autumn leaves falling off the trees outside the window, the clouds and the blue skies simultaneous. For our world reflects back to us all that we hold. Amen, and blessed be, and namaste. I feel like I need to leave and come back. as we come together this morning, our reflection today is this invitation to start thinking about what generosity means, what it means for us as individuals, what it means for us as a community, what it means on this bigger scale. And I said during my welcome that the UUA has created a new values system to kind of transform our principles into action. And I want to read the UUA description of generosity. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, our presence, and our resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. I'm going to be honest with all of you. It has been a very trying season to cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. And I don't fault myself for that hard cultivation. The world around us is hard. It is hard to witness. It is hard to participate in. It is hard to understand sometimes why things are happening the way they are happening. And so as I sat down this week to reflect on generosity and how does generosity speak back to a hard reality, for most of this week I kept drawing blanks. It was a hard week to write, y'all. And like many of you, and like our story this morning, often when I hear the word generosity, I immediately think of material goods. I think of money. I think of donations. I think of when people describe others as they're the kind of person who will give you the shirt off their back. That kind of generosity found in our everyday speech, found in the stone soup story, that everyone has something to give, even those who have very little, doesn't always feel like it speaks to what I need to hear. So as I sat down with generosity this week, a memory came up for me. When I was in seminary from 2014 to 2017. I always say that my bookends for seminary was the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement and the election of Donald Trump. Quite the time to be doing the work of intentional justice reflection and the purpose of the world and ontology. Like, seminary focuses on the issues of our world because those are the issues of faith. And when I was in seminary, I took a course titled Atheisms and Radical Theology. It was one of my favorite classes. It was the kind of class that, for the most part, challenged my implicit biases, broadened my imagination of what this thing called religion is. But it was also the first class where a professor had called me out for not being a generous reader. The book in question was A Letter to a Christian Nation by Sam Harris, and my failure to cultivate generosity was sparked by a chapter where he did nothing but lob racist and Islamophobic remarks about the impact of Islam in our world. At the time I took that class and was reading that chapter, I was simultaneously studying interfaith conflict work. In that same semester, I was in a class titled The Narrative Power of Interfaith Peacebuilding. Taught by a Muslim professor, I had been spending hours each week listening to storytellers from across faith communities of Boston about their struggles in building communities and coalitions of difference and the biases and the misunderstandings and the tropes that our system wages against their faith. And I watched how in each class we'd have 3 to 4 different faith leaders who are in deep relationship with one another. I watched them hold each other accountable, cultivate real, authentic relationship, not in spite of conflict, but through conflict. Through the tensions of their community, they were able to build some sort of relationship with one another. And so when I turned to my atheisms class, and I was reading a book that offered me only a one-sided story of nothing but tropes and hurtful language, I had to sit and I was like, no, I sat with my professor telling me that I'm not a generous reader because I told him I would not use that book as one of my sources in my final paper. I had models for real generosity in relationship. When I could not find them in Sam Harris's words, I found them in the voices of the people around me. I eagerly dismissed his thoughts, and at the time, I was chastised for my dismissal, but it's one of those stories that has followed me over the years. Was I being an ungenerous reader? Should I have given him more of the benefit of the doubt? And as I've reflected on this, what it means to be a generous reader when I disagree with every fabric of my being with the words that I am reading, how can I find generosity? What I've learned is that generosity calls us to kindness and gratitude, like our UUA values say, but that generosity is just as deeply informed by our integrity and our conscience. I could not be a generous reader for Sam Harris's Islamophobic rhetoric because it fundamentally contradicted my integrity and my commitment to the inherent worthiness and dignity of every person. I did not wage personal attacks against Sam Harris's personhood. He does not know I exist. I named the reality of the situation in his words that were designed to fearmonger and promote hate against a group of people who are marginalized in American society. What I've learned is that there is generosity in conflict, in telling the truth responsibly with accountability. A kind gesture that goes against one's integrity is not really a kindness. Sabotaging, silencing one's own voice in order to prioritize the comfort of others with whom we disagree or are marginalized by is not a kindness. In conflict studies, we call that behavior negative peace. It is not the kind, generative, holistic peace that we sing about in hymns or embroider on throw pillows at HomeGoods. Negative peace is silent violence that cultivates resentment, distrust, and fear amongst people and paves the way for oppression. Generosity does not call us to create a world of negative peace. Generosity calls us to cultivate gratitude and kindness so that we can speak truth to power, build communities and coalitions across differences, and hold others accountable in a shared commitment to justice, equity, and liberation. I tried my hardest in planning this service that I wasn't going to talk about the election all that much. I'm not good at that. I do not have to remind you that in less than 72 hours, we will all be anxiously staring at screens. If you have not voted yet, I want to strongly encourage you to do so. What I do want to remind you, though, is to check in with your sense of generosity and its relationship to your integrity. For many of us, Tuesday is not the end of a painful journey, but the start of a long struggle. The odds of this election being clear-cut and unopposed are not in our favor. How you speak to yourself matters in the days ahead. How you speak to the people you love matters in the days ahead. Generosity is more than just saying a kind thing or giving someone something nice. Generosity moves from our integrity and alignment with our values. This was a hard reflection to write, in part because I wanted to go off in 55 different areas. I wanted to talk about so many things that I can't. And I want to be very clear. Our faith does not call us to be generous with fascism. Our faith does not call us to be generous with the systems of oppression that enact violence in our world. By extending generosity in ways that undermine our integrity and our values, we are doing more harm than good. And at the same time, at the heart of generosity is gratitude and kindness. How are you cultivating gratitude and kindness today? How are you generating gratitude and kindness for yourself? For the fact that I wrote a very hodgepodge sermon after a hard week in front of more hard weeks, because I'm grateful and kind to myself that this is not a perfect sermon, but it is the sermon that I'm able to write. And that is a kindness. How are you generating, cultivating, nourishing, tending your relationships to those who you say you love? How are you meeting them with generosity and kindness and grace? You'll hear me say so many times that I believe Unitarian Universalism is a faith of action. Generosity is not just, oh, I'm thinking nice things about myself. It's saying, I am someone with inherent worthiness and dignity, and I need to treat myself with the respect and compassion and care and grace and love that I extend to so many people in my life, especially when days are hard. And the days are going to be hard, y'all. I wish this was like a big optimistic sermon of like, yay, the future's clear and bright and sunny. We need each other. We need community. Generosity, as the language of our tradition has given us this year, which honestly has more syllables than I needed. Generosity invites us to commit freely and compassionately to sharing our faith, our presence, and resources. This is not the season to be overextending ourselves. It is the season of being generous with ourselves and others so that we create a sustainable pathway forward. Committing freely means we do it without coercion. That is in an alignment with our integrity. I do it because I give enthusiastic consent because I love myself and I love others. I am generous with others from a place of enthusiasm, not because they made me feel like I had to. Committing compassionately means we hold the tender reality of human suffering in the heart of our generosity. Compassion means to suffer alongside. It means my suffering sees your suffering. Generosity requires us to be human, to meet each other with our humanness forward. We are not going to be perfect people in the coming weeks. We're going to have sleepless nights and painful conversations. We are going to have a great unknown. And what does it mean to meet that unknown by saying, I will meet you and know that I love myself and I love the people I love. We are called to extend generosity to others, and we are called to extend that generosity to ourselves. There are many ways to practice loving kindness. There are mantras, there are hymns, there are songs, there is art, there are hikes, there's nature. There are so many ways to meet yourself with the beauty of you in ways that only you can. This is Unitarian Universalism, y'all. I am not going to give you a how-to guide. Each of us are called on our individual search for meaning and truth responsibly, and we do so in community because we care. Generosity might feel hard, and generosity is our starting place. Start with gratitude and loving kindness. What can move forward from there? It's not going to magically make fascism disappear, but it will sustain you in the coming days so that you may better meet the moment. And that is good news, y'all. That is good news. And I leave you with that. Amen and blessed be, and namaste.